Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another installment of the Youch Films podcast. Today we have with us a very talented actor, comedian, and writer. He's appeared in over a dozen shows and has several books available for both children and adults. Please help me give a warm welcome to the talented Neil Crone.
You hear them screaming in the background.
Tyler, you needed to bring your Google sound effects with you.
Dude, Google just completely, the sound effects are gone. You didn't know that?
Oh, I didn't. I don't use them.
Yeah, they're gone. They're gone now. I can't bring the Google sound effects. I'm sorry, Ezra. But anyways.
I guess let's just start from the very beginning. How did you become involved in acting and writing? Where did your passion grow from these things?
Well, I think I've been, interested in that ever since I was a kid, and sort of being the class clown and kind of wanting to be the center of attention and that kind of thing. One thing led to another, and I found myself, performing in, school plays and things like that, and loving that and loving the rush that you get from having a live audience. And before you know it, it's something that you really want to do. I didn't do it professionally until I think I was 27, I guess. Yeah, in 1987, because I was a high school teacher prior to that for 3 years, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, yeah. And then, but the whole time I was teaching high school, I was performing downtown and doing sketches and improv comedy and stuff like that. And so when the opportunity came along to audition for Second City, I took it, and then they hired me, and then the rest, as they say, is history.
Very impressive. Now, folks, I'm just going to backtrack a little bit because I totally forgot to introduce the people who are joining me here. We have Bjorn from the Goosebumps number one Aussie fan channel. He's probably the biggest Goosebumps fan in the world. And then we also have Tiki from So You Want to Be an Imagineer. I just wanted to get that out. I'm sorry, Neil, for...
Well, I can tell you don't like me anymore. And I mean, that's so clear. I'm kidding.
So, Neil, what did you get involved with after that? How did people contact you, and what did you do?
Well, having Second City on my resume was a big deal, and it is for most actors, and it gives you a lot of legitimacy. It made it very easy for me to get an agent at that point in time. And once I had an agent, then I was being sent out on auditions for, commercials, television shows, movies, films, radio stuff. And initially I did a lot of commercial work, which was great because it was a great way to make money and a great way to learn about camera and how to be on set and and practice your craft, and then bit by bit, slowly, nicer roles came along, bigger opportunities to do television work, do film work, and that kind of thing.
Okay, very impressive.
Awesome.
So we're just gonna cut straight to Goosebumps here. When did that come along? Because that was like 1990. Can you correct me here, Jordan?
97, I believe, was the one that Horrorland.
That sounds right, because I remember that because that was a particularly difficult shoot. I don't know if you guys have any pictures of me on that day, but I was shooting for a week. I played 3 different monsters on this show, and they don't tell you that when you audition for the show. You go in and you do the voices of the different monsters and whatnot, and it doesn't occur to you at the time of the audition that you're going to be encased in a foam muscle suit. You're going to have a complete head cast done of your head, which is, they wrap your entire head in plaster, and they make a mold of it for this enormous headset that has these huge, very heavy curly horns on it. And we were shooting in August, and I remember I had a very bad moment. I was sitting in the makeup chair, and the guys were putting. I had the foam muscle suit on, and it had to be 30, 35 degrees Celsius, outside, very humid. So I was already sweating and warm, and then they pulled this, this headpiece on over my head, and it fits incredibly snugly because it has to look realistic. It gets attached to the neck of your muscle suit, so you're completely sewn in here.
Oh,
and
man.
then they begin to they latex in the mask around your eyes.
Oh.
And there were no nose holes on it. There was only a slit for a mouth. So I started to have. I felt my pulse started to race like crazy. My vision started to get blurry, and the two special effects guys who were working on me were right in front of me. And I said, "Guys, I think I'm having a panic attack. I want to pull this thing off right now." And they were great because they had been guys who had been doing this all their life, and they kind of got right in my face, and they talked me down. They literally said, "Relax, breathe, you'll get through it." And I did. I was able to get into the suit, and we shot this thing for. I think I was shooting for like 5 days in a row, and it was exhausting. I think I must have lost about 20 pounds just from sweat. And in between takes, I had this great small army of people who would rip the back of the suit open and put a fan on my spine to try to keep me cool. So it was crazy. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was fun to do all 3 different characters and whatnot. But it was very, very taxing. And I remember about halfway through the shoot, my wife arrived with my 2 little boys, and they were 7 years old and 4 years old at the time. And my wife walked them over towards me, and I went to go to say hello to the guys, and forgetting that I was dressed like this monster. Just terrified the hell out of my 2 children until they heard my voice, and even then they weren't entirely sure until they saw me take the head of the thing off. But that was quite a deal. I did a few episodes of Goosebumps. The other ones were much less physically taxing. I got to play regular people. I played a postman in one of them, which was a lot of fun.
Oh yes, Ghost Next Door.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were great. I mean, Goosebumps employed a lot of Canadian actors because they shot so many episodes up here, and it was a great way for a lot of us, to learn our craft and to get on camera and to have some fun doing that stuff.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah,
And
I gave
awesome.
huge credit with my kids because my kids grew up watching me. They grew up watching me on television, so it was no big deal for them. And it literally wasn't until I went to college, and his roommates found out that his dad had been on Goosebumps, and so suddenly he was the dude.
Oh god,
that's so awesome. I gotta ask, did Hannah ever get her letter to Mr. Chesney?
Yeah, it didn't happen.
Oh damn!
Sorry, Hannah.
Oh god.
And then Bjorn, did you have any other questions for Neil regarding Goosebumps?
Yeah, I just had to ask. I mean, you obviously grew up in the prime time, in the prime time of Goosebumps and being in the show, So was it kind of just everywhere you went? Like if you go to the grocery store, did you just see Goosebumps everywhere?
Well, I mean, I think it was very big, and again, as I said, my kids at the time were right in that window as well. And I was, I think we had every R.L. Stine book, that was written, and they loved that kind of thing, and it was very cool for them to be able to come down to set and see it. Yeah, it was kind of everywhere, which was cool. But again, as at the time, I guess I was in my 30s, 37 years old, I guess, 1997. I don't think I realized what a huge phenomenon it was. I knew that my kids liked it, and it was kind of a cool job, but it was just a job to me at the time,
Yeah, that's it. Did R.L. Stine ever visit the set? Because I noticed a few set photos that he was actually present. So
Yeah, I had that same
No,
question. too.
I didn't see him at our set at all on either one of the episodes that I shot. He may have been. I might not even have recognized him, but I certainly was never ever introduced to him. That's for sure.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I just think Goosebumps is such a powerful learning tool for kids, and it was almost kind of like the proto Harry Potter in that way, where it was just these things that, and I was definitely in that age range, picking them up and reading them, and they were written very easily to just digest and get into. And so I think on the Goosebumps the TV series end of things, I was talking about this a little bit before we went on air. On the TV series end of it, it's kind of like you have these kids who are reading these books, and then it's like every week as the TV show comes out, it's just like, okay, what are they going to adapt next week? What are they going to adapt next week? And me being the big theme park fan I loved Horrorland, and of course, Horrorland was just that was my thing. That was my episode.
Yeah,
That's right.
They were great books. They were. I mean, I'm a big reader. I'm a big fan of reading, and I'm a huge fan of anything that gets kids reading. And yeah, you're right. Those books they predated the Harry Potter phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. That's it. And
no, there's no telling how many kids those books hooked on reading. And those kids would then graduate to Stephen King or H.P. Lovecraft and start reading for life, which is wonderful.
So Goosebumps became this huge giant without the internet or social media. It just became this huge phenomenon without the use of all that. Harry Potter was more like the early 2000s sort of thing, so it had the use of the internet and social media, but Goosebumps became this huge thing without all that, just kids telling kids. It was like a little secret kids network that Stein described it to be. And it's so cool to know that it became a huge thing just through kids,
like reality. I'm sorry. Reality basically became like, "Are you afraid of the dark?" It was just like kids were just like getting around in campfires, like, "Oh, have you heard of the Haunted Mask? Have you heard of the Legend of Terror Tower?"
Yeah,
that stuff's great. I mean, it sort of did. It sort of brought back the era of the spooky story, the telling ghost stories and stuff, which I think everybody is kind of wired to enjoy, on some level. And again, because the books were, of a size that little hands could read them pretty quickly, they were perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And did you gain any friendships through your working experience with Goosebumps? What was that all like?
Well, the people that I worked with, the people who became my best friends over that shoot were the people who were helping me, and those were, the special effects guys who were remarkable guys and very, very, very funny guys too, because they were used to working under very stressful conditions and stuff. And the wardrobe people, and and I've since learned in my 30 years of being in the business that those people, the wardrobe people, can be your saviors, because they're the ones who are. Everybody else is just kind of worried about getting the shot, and making sure that that what's on camera looks good, and they make their schedule for the day. So you can be dying inside a piece of very uncomfortable, a wardrobe, and the director doesn't really care that much about it, and the producers don't really. But the wardrobe people, they got their eye on you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think you muted yourself.
Yeah, you did. Accidentally. Oh boy. So
Sounds of
Ezra,
silence.
what was your favorite Goosebumps book growing up?
I don't know. I had a bunch. I think one of my favorite pieces of artwork was from the Ghost Speech. Ghost Speech, yeah. And the Haunted Mask too. I like the artwork on those books. Neil, I think you muted yourself there.
Yeah, I wrote a message in chat too. Hopefully he'll.
That's unfortunate. He was in the middle of a really interesting.
I mean, this has happened before, right? Like it's happened with poor Jacob before, where Jacob will go on a tangent and he'll be muted, and it'll be like, "Oh no, this." And it was going so well to start. I was so into this. Okay.
Everything's fine. We just need to get this figured out.
I'm sure it'll come back on.
Once Neil gets done with whatever, just like, super insightful, deep philosophical thought that he has right now, I'm sure he'll realize that we're not responding to him. Oh, Andy's gone. Okay.
That's
boy.
not a good sign. Sorry, folks.
Well, it's Hangouts being Hangouts, Sandy. I mean, I can vouch for that. Hangouts has been super tricky the past few weeks. Everybody loves Raymond and whatnot and so on.
Oh, there we are.
All right.
Sorry,
cool.
guys.
We're back.
My phone just rang. It was my dad calling me. I took a message, but I guess it just totally hung up on you guys.
I guess that's
right.
what we do with microphone.
That's fine. That's all good.
Yeah. Anyway, yes. What I was saying, the wardrobe people are the ones that can save your bacon sometimes. There's no question.
All right.
And then I think that may just wrap up Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
Unless he wants to see a really awesome collection.
Oh yeah, Neil, would you like to see his collection he has?
What's the collection of?
Goosebumps.
Like just the book?
No, the Bjorn, you'll have to show
all
him.
things Goosebumps. Hold on, I'll lock it onto his screen.
Camera around. Oh god, how do I turn this around? Here we go. Oh, there we go.
Oh man.
Oh, holy cow! Yeah.
Right.
And it goes all the way.
Oh, that's impressive.
And there's 2 rooms of that, if I'm correct.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
He could literally start a Goosebumps museum with that type of stuff.
You could.
Oh yes, and we got plenty of the Horrorland in here too. So.
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
We're all set for that.
That's very cool.
Just cutting back to what we're talking about here. It must have not been long after that someone got in contact with you for Thomas, right? That was 97.
I'm trying to think of when Thomas was released. I mean, all those years get kind of squished together.
That came out in 2000.
Yeah.
I mean, the Thomas thing came about in a very funny way. My buddy Kevin Frank, who I had been improvising with for years, and have known Kevin for many years, we got hired to audition just to be, a couple of voices on the show, like a couple of the trucks, or Troublesome Trucks, or James, I think, and maybe Gordon, I'm not sure. And when we went in and read for this thing, and then we got the gig. And I remember being in the studio with Britt Allcroft, and she was kind of under a bit of pressure. It seemed like I guess things weren't going as smoothly or quickly as they wanted to. And Kevin and I had a ball, and because we knew each other so well, we were able to improvise dialogue and do the Troublesome Truck stuff really well, because we know each other's speech patterns so well, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And we were on a break during recording, and there was a monitor in the studio with us, and on this thing, they would show clips of the film, and we would do our voices to what was ever happening there. And they started to roll a segment that had Diesel 10 in it.
Mm-hmm.
And as they're rolling this thing along, I just started to do this, just improvise this goofy Russian voice.
Right.
Sort of sounded like this, I'm going to Pinchy, why don't you come and get these trucks for me? So and it was literally one of those Hollywood moments where I see Britt through the window. She hits the talkback button, and she goes, wait, say that again. And as I did the voice, and she goes, that's perfect. She was and so she had me do the voice of Diesel 10, and it was great because we recorded that, and it seemed to fit perfectly, and they loved it, and they loved what Kevin and I were doing, to the point where the producers put Kevin and I in a room, and they had us punch the script up and sort of try to make the script a little funnier. So it was a great gig for us. We were getting paid to do voices, and then we were getting paid to script write as well. And then I ended up landing this great role of the Diesel 10 character. Unfortunately, as you guys well know, probably, I mean, they ended up changing the voice
Yeah.
again for a very silly reason. I kind of thought they thought that somebody in Los Angeles thought that, you know, making the bad guy a Russian might be politically incorrect.
Yeah, test audiences thought it was racist or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And,
I mean, come on, you have the Rocky and Bullwinkle villains. Those are
Well,
classic evil Russians.
exactly, you know, and if you heard the original with the Russian voice, I think it was a much better film. Yeah.
Would you mind giving us a sample of that voice? Because I know there's probably going to be some people here in the future sometime who are here for this very reason.
Yes, yes.
Oh, sure. You know, he talked like that all the time, and he was always talking to Pinchy, his crane on top of him. And he used to get really upset with Pinchy. Stop that! What do you think you're doing?
That's great.
It was a really fun voice to do too, and it was one of those voices where it just felt like it totally fit the character, you know. And I think it did. I think that's why Britt liked it so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said you were auditioning for the Troublesome Trucks, and those never actually had any lines in the film, which I was kind of upset about. What role did they play?
I think stuff got. I think that film got. I mean, it got
butchered. Yeah,
it did. It went through so many different permutations and stuff. I had a good friend of mine, an actor friend named John Lennox, and John originally played a character who rode a motorcycle. In the show, he was kind of a bad guy, and he had many days filming on the Isle of Wight, doing the movie.
P.T. Boomer.
And he never made it into the film pretty much. And I remember seeing John. I met him. I walked into my agency one day, and I see this guy standing there with his back to me, and he has this very cool. Sort of leather-sleeved, embroidered jacket with this gorgeous picture of Thomas the Tank Engine on the back of the jacket. And I went, and I said, "Whoa, it's a cool jacket." And he turns around and it's John. I said, "John, where did you get that jacket?" And he looked at me like he was kind of pissed off. He goes, "I was in the movie." And I went, "I was in the movie. I didn't get a jacket." You know? So none of us film guys, none of us voice guys got the jacket. I would have killed for one of those. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, that I've done a ton of research on that film. I mean, I've watched it back to back like hundreds of times, and yeah, that film definitely went through a lot of cutting and splicing here and there. And I think one of the big actors they ended up cutting was John Bellis, who was going to originally voice Thomas, and I heard he was just totally heartbroken by that.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet them?
Never did meet him. Did Eddie Glenn end up doing Thomas's voice? Was that Eddie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Eddie's a good friend of mine and a very talented voice actor. But yeah, it went through so many different. It was just troubled, and I think there were too many cooks, trying to get their fingers in that pie, and they had. I mean, when you have Peter Fonda and Alec Baldwin lined up, I mean, the film is then yours to wreck, So,
sure.
And it's too bad because I mean, again, my kids grew up watching Thomas. I was a big fan of the show, and I loved both incarnations, the Ringo Starr and the George Carlin versions, and I was really thrilled. Kevin and I were both really thrilled to be able to do it, and it's unfortunate that things didn't work out as well as they might.
Did you ever visit any of the sets?
No, we never did. We were strictly studio guys. And we worked with Phil. I'm trying to remember Phil's name. Phil was one of the executive producers on the show. He's the guy that hired us to be writers on the show as well. And so we just reported to their production offices, and they gave us a little office with a computer, and we just kind of went in there and just made we just watched each scene and tried to make it funnier if we could.
So no crazy Alec Baldwin stories then?
No, that would be great. That would have been very cool to meet Alec. Yeah.
Right.
And then so Tyler, you had a question.
Yes, I have a very niche question that all right, just feel free to say no to this. I'm expecting you to say no to this, but are you familiar at all with the Nostalgia Critics review of Thomas and the Magic Railroad?
I don't think I am. No.
Okay, I didn't think so. I didn't think so. Well, there is a meme that came out of that review, but I don't want to bore you with the details of it, so it's fine. I was going to ask you about the sparkle, sparkle, sparkle meme.
No, never heard of that.
Alec Baldwin,
Sounds
Alec
very
Baldwin at
interesting.
one point of the movie just uses magic and just says like sparkle, sparkle, sparkle.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah,
And
very
so
funny
I have
stuff.
I have a fan question here. There's a Thomas and Magic Railroad fan page that I'm actually a part of, and there's someone who was asking about Keith Scott. He heard that Keith Scott dropped out, was going to be the original voice of Diesel 10.
Interesting.
Did you know anything about that? I've never heard of Keith Scott.
I never
before.
did hear about that. I never heard about that at all. Yeah, to my mind, I'm assuming they must have had somebody in there, because when we went into the studio, I mean, they were well into recording. So I wonder if perhaps they already had a voice for him. I don't recall hearing one when I watched the playback. When I started to improvise the voice, I don't recall hearing an existing voice. So maybe they didn't at that point in time. I don't know.
And then you also voiced Splatter and Gordon. Did
Mhm.
that just come out by chance, or did you audition for those specifically?
Yeah, I think we auditioned for a bunch of them at the time, and did a whole bunch of different kinds of voices for all the different trains, and then I think they just took, different people and tried to see whose voice would fit whatever character best, and they went from there.
And then the last thing I want to touch on, it's not anything regarding any of the characters or anything, but something this is actually new to me. You were the creative consultant, and what does a creative consultant do in a film?
Well, again, essentially, that's just sort of the guy who punches things up and tries to make the script better in any way.
Okay.
And in our case, we were sort of we were tasked with making it punchier and a little funnier, maybe making it sort of like a Bugs Bunny cartoon where there's a level for kids and then there's a level for adults as well.
Yeah.
So we tried to do that. I think a lot of our stuff ended up on the cutting room floor, because it just again, so many people with so many opinions trying to make a film. So but it was a good payday, that's for sure. It was a great payday for us. Yeah.
So really quick, Ezra, I want to ask one more question, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, Diesel 10 is one of the few characters in the Thomas series who's actually like a villain, a legitimate villain, and I'm just wondering, since Thomas is such an innocent, humble franchise, and there's hardly any menace to it at all, was that a challenge to you to kind of like incorporate a villainous type character into such an innocent series?
Well, I think if you look at the way he's modeled, he looks like a nasty guy. Like he has the face is not very friendly. He has Pinchy on top of him, which has like big teeth on him and stuff. And I think that's why I think the Russian thing worked so well, was because he did sound like he was kind of a big, scary, blusterous character. Which I think you have to have so that you feel really great when he doesn't succeed. When Thomas beats him, it's like that's an age-old story in Hollywood. Your hero is only as great as the bad guy is bad. So
exactly.
Yeah, I think it was important to do that. And again, I think when we recorded the first voice, I was encouraged to make him a little bit scary. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel when you have like a show like Thomas, I feel there's all, as Tyler said, there's a lot of very innocent stuff and everything like that. But during the original series, especially, there were quite a few scary episodes, specifically in season 5, which is a season that came out right before Thomas and the Magic Railroad hit the theater. A lot of scary stuff, and so I feel you
really. I haven't watched that. I'll have to go back and watch season 5. I'm not aware of all this dark, scary imagery in Thomas's nation.
Not exactly like intentionally scary. More like not unknowingly
more like early Sesame Street scary, like that kind of scary.
Well, there is the one episode where Thomas battles Satan.
That's
people don't talk about that one very much.
Well,
Oh.
as I was saying, there. I think if you have a show like that, I think it's always nice and it's always refreshing to have a nice balance of having something scary like Diesel 10 and having a certain level of innocence as well.
Yeah.
Aw.
And
Well, I think we tried to make him, as scary as he got. We always tried to make him a bumbling idiot.
yeah,
And he was
Right.
he was always muttering at Pinchy, when things were always going wrong for him. And those are the most fun villains to have, right? The villains that you almost kind of like a little bit,
yeah.
With like the Gastons or the Cruella de Villes of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
And then you mentioning just how trying to make Diesel 10 as scary as possible. I believe that's why they cut P.T. Boomer, John
Lennox. Yep.
Yeah, because test audiences thought he was too scary.
Mhm.
But then there's a bunch of people saying, well, Diesel 10 is scarier than he is. So that's something that baffles me and baffles fans as well. I mean, I personally, I'd much rather have Diesel 10 in there than P.T. Boomer, but it's just one of those things. Is I guess it's always going to remain a mystery.
Well, it will be. I mean, until you were able to see the footage they shot of John, I have no idea what they did with him. So who knows?
One day that stuff will all be uncovered and released.
Thomas the Magic Railroad, the Criterion Collection.
That's right.
But during this time, the early 2000s, you also did a bunch of other stuff I see here.
Oh, yeah.
You did, something called, this is all stuff I'm not familiar with, Cube 2 Hypercube, and then Left Behind the movie.
Isn't Cube 2 technically just called Cube Squared? Wouldn't that be the correct pronunciation of it?
Yeah, the Cube movies are actually very cool.
Cool.
The first Cube movie, especially, has a huge cult following. I don't know that our movie was as good as the first one. We had more money to make a film, but they did a great job on the first film. They're worth looking at because it's a very interesting premise. It's just people who sort of randomly wake up and they're trapped inside this sort of maze of cubes. And there are, every cube has its own booby traps and difficulties and whatnot. And these people have to try to figure out why they're there and how to get out. And it's an interesting little philosophical and psychological journey.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you did American Psycho 2 as well, which fits kind of in that same vein of Cube, where American Psycho especially, I feel, is just this huge movie now where I feel like it's growing even more and more of a cult following as the years go on and as it becomes rooted into cinema. So how was that kind of following up the classic Christian Bale version?
Well, I mean, American Psycho 2, in comparison to American Psycho, is really like, following up, Taxi Driver with an Archie comic. I mean, it's just an awful movie.
Okay.
And, the only cool thing about it was I got to work with Mila Kunis.
She's always good.
Yeah, it was one of her first features. After that '70s show or during that '70s show. And it's just an awful movie, I don't. In fact, I don't even know why I'm amazed that they were allowed to actually name it American Psycho 2 because
Is it one of those situations where they just wrote the script and the studio just decided to slap the American Psycho name on it?
Yeah, who knows? It could have been a big marketing thing, but it has absolutely no tie-in with the
like no Thomas
Bale
Bateman
film.
or anything like that.
Yeah, nothing at all. American Psycho is a really good film. I mean, it's a difficult film to watch, but it's a very funny film, and it's a great satire of American values and stuff. But American Psycho 2 is just a slasher flick.
Fair enough.
I've actually just noticed now that you were also in Hairspray. What was that audition process like?
Well, Hairspray is interesting because Hairspray, if you watch the final movie, I'm not in the picture. Very nice, very enjoyable day of shooting, an evening of shooting with John Travolta and Queen Latifah, and had wonderful chances to sit there and chat with John in between takes and stuff. And then my scene got cut out of the picture.
No.
That's unfortunate, but it was very cool to meet him. and chat with him, even though he was like he's fully in drag as I'm talking to him.
Right, I was going to ask about that. Yeah,
yeah. But I was amazed at how big he is. He's a very big man, very tall. Yeah, but great guy, lovely man.
Oh.
And then you did Left Behind, the movie. I know nothing about that. What was that all about?
Well, the Left Behind series is a very popular kind of pseudo-Christian series of books about the the apocalypse and the Book of Revelations,
the rapture,
exactly. And so I shot that film. The story that I have about that film is kind of weird. Is that I shot it, and I was working with Kirk. Was it Kirk John? What's Kirk's name? Oh, it was the guy from Full House. Anyway, he was the lead of the film, and a big Christian guy, a nice guy. But then I remember watching the film later on, and I thought, oh, my kids can watch this. It's kind of a cool little movie. It's sort of a Christian movie. It's nothing. There's no slashing going on. But at one point in the film, my character, along with hundreds of thousands of others, just disappears. Gets pulled up to heaven before the or during the rapture. And my youngest son, who was, I don't know, what year did that come out? Is it say they're on IMDb? I'm not sure when that
2000.
was.
Yeah, 2000.
Yeah, he would have been he's born in 1994, so he'd be 6 years old. He's watching this thing. This is another moment of great parenting on my part. We're watching this film, and I disappear, and then suddenly I look at him, and his eyes are welling up with tears.
Aww.
And he's terribly frightened, about what just happened. I had to sort of explain to him that no, it's all green screen. It's all this and that. So,
that's great.
Yeah, that's my Left Behind story.
And then you also, I'm not sure how many sitcoms you did, but I know one of your more popular ones is something called I Love Mummy.
Yeah, I Love Mummy.
I just love the title of that.
Another great little series. I mean, cheesy family fun. About my family, we inherit the house. My aunt leaves me this house in her will. I moved my family into it, and of course, my son discovers up in the attic. My aunt was this kind of crazy old lady who was a bit of an archaeologist, and up in the attic, of course, there's a sarcophagus, and there's a live mummy inside it. Who the thing gets opened up, and he becomes part of our family. And the lab, yeah. The cool thing about I Love Mummy, for those of you who are like Games of Thrones fans, is I remember I was watching Game of Thrones, and I'm watching the scene with the Dothraki going on there, and I'm looking, I'm going, I kind of recognize that guy. Wait a second, who's that guy? And the guy's he's speaking Dothraki. It's like I don't understand what he's saying. So I watched the credits, and sure enough, the young actor whose name is Elias Gabel became he was the guy that played the mummy in I Love Mummy, and I Love Mummy was his first job out of theater school. He was a young kid from London, England, and then he went on to have a really solid career. In fact, I just saw him the other night in another episode of something. He's turned into this great big strapping handsome guy, and he's having himself a heck of a career. So it all started with I Love Mummy.
Wow, that's really cool.
That sounds like just a delightful series to binge at some point.
Oh yeah, it was totally fun. It was just goofy fun, and I really like doing shows like that because, they're totally non-offensive and anybody can watch them and they just make you feel better, So as opposed to doing these really dark, police procedurals where people are getting raped and murdered and stuff,
It's like the Andy Griffith Show, but with the undead.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then speaking of family entertainment, you did something called Earthy Porgy, which this is all new to me. I went and I actually watched an episode of it last night, and I actually found it very entertaining.
It is. It was a great show. Earthy Porgy was hysterically funny. I played a cockroach, essentially, and myself and a buddy, an actor of mine, we played these two cockroaches who's, every episode they were just trying to find something to eat. And it was great fun. We got to do goofy voices. Jason Jason Barr is a radio personality here in Toronto.
Mhm.
He did Erky, who had a very Scottish voice. He was always talking like that. And Perky was just, he was sort of like a really wound up Woody Allen character. He was very high pitched and very upset all the time. And we had a ball doing it. We did 2 seasons of it.
Nice.
I love doing animation. Animation is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I grew up watching Bugs Bunny cartoons, so I get a huge kick out of being able to do voices for cartoons.
And yeah, you have quite a few up here. You did Hammerman, you did Bob and Doug, Pearly, you did Care Bears in 2004.
Yeah.
Oh, the Mr. Men show.
Oh.
I used to watch that.
Oh, we did hundreds of episodes of Mr. Men, and there were a cast of about 6 of us, and all of us, we were doing multiple characters in the show. That was a lot of fun.
And then I guess just going off from that, we could probably move on to Total Drama Island, because that's right in that little category there, animation. Yeah. Tyler, did you want to start us off here?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a big Total Drama fan, so excuse me if some of these questions are a little bit too niche for you, but because I was really into it, and I binge watched your whole season over the week before I knew you were coming on and everything, so I'm all caught up. Okay, so your season, The Redonkulous Race, was a departure from other seasons of Total Drama because it had a new host, it had a new game format. Instead of Survivor, it was going to be an Amazing Race style event. Did you or any of the crew working on the show feel the pressure to live up to kind of the classic era of the Total Drama seasons, especially with the loss of Chris McLean as the popular host of the show?
I don't think so. I think we saw it as a whole different entity, and each with all different characters and whatnot, and it was kind of a standalone thing for us. I don't ever recall, thinking, oh, we got to make this as good as Total Drama or whatever. We got to, it was just what it was, and great. I think great for its own sake,
Yeah, I got to say, I am the one thing that I was thrown off when I started watching your season was the fact that they had the Chris McLean character as the host for 6 or so seasons before that. And then suddenly we have this new kind of Phil Cohagen type guy. But I got very used to him very quickly. And, the season does very much hold up.
Yeah, Terry McGurran. I think Terry was also one of the writers of the show. And he played the host voice as well. He's a great voice talent.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, since Total Drama is, of course, it's got that meta quality to it where you're supposed to be watching a reality TV show and these contestants are giving confessionals to the camera. I'm curious if you ever went back into any reality TV and did research on these confessionals for your delivery.
Not really. I mean, most of us who have a TV set, have seen what those look like, and so I think it was pretty self-explanatory, and we didn't really need much direction in terms of how to do those. Merlan Ridley was the director of the show, and she's a fabulous animation director. And yeah, I mean, and the cast was just stellar. So people with oodles of animation experience. So it wasn't, everybody kind of knew how to handle those, I think.
Okay. This is probably the most meaty question I have in terms of substance, but obviously on Total Drama, you play a father who's wanting to connect with his son. And I'm curious on both parts, were there any pieces of your own personal relationship with your own kids that you took into that, or even were there elements of your own father that you put into the Dwayne character?
No, I don't think so. I think the closest analogy I would come to is I remember thinking, this guy's more like Clark Griswold.
He totally is. You're right about that.
Than
Yeah.
anybody else, you know. I think that analogy really worked. You know, just a guy who was just trying way too hard to be his son's pal, and totally embarrassing him at every turn. You know.
Okay. Was there any all-time favorite Dwayne line from Total Drama Redonkulous Race? Any line in particular that stands out to you?
You know, I wish I could think of one, guys, but you know, I can't. Unfortunately, I just loved the character because he was just such a dork. He was constantly, you know, I love this, especially the moments where he would say something on camera. And then suddenly realized that his wife was probably going to
yeah.
You know?
Hi, honey.
Exactly. Trying to back up and back out of it while he could.
One of my personal favorite moments was this was like maybe episode 3 or 4. It was pretty early on, and all the teams had to memorize this line of dialect. This, you know, like this one line of another language, and you and Junior were like running back and forth, you know, like 3, 4, 5 times throughout the episode, and you're just constantly getting this phrase wrong, and then Junior is just like, oh god. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, lots of fun. Yeah, I mean, and the cool thing about the show was that we, as actors, when we went into the studio every week and we got our scripts, everybody started flicking to the back of the script really quickly to see if they died.
Yeah,
because none of us knew how long the character was going to last. You know,
and that's a really fun thing about the Total Drama series, right?
Yeah.
Is that you essentially have like the 5 core characters that are going to last till the end of the game. But we as an audience, at least I'm talking about this from an audience point of view. It's so fun, much like it is to watch an actual season of Survivor or something, to go in and be like, okay, who are the editors really focusing on? What characters are getting the long-term stories here?
Yeah. And I would have loved it to have been a fly on the wall in the writing room to decide, you know, how they decided who was going to win. Because they really didn't. I guess clearly it was about, you know, who was most entertaining, because you want to keep the most entertaining characters in there forever. But I guess I actually should be happy that I lasted as long as I did. You know. Yeah,
you lasted close to the end. I think your team went out a little after the halfway point.
Yeah, we did okay. We for a while. Yeah.
So speaking of that, is there any challenges from your season you remember that you would actually do in real life?
Wasn't there something involving eating something?
There was something involving, like, they had to pick out 5 random spices and then mix them together.
Yeah. I might be up for that.
All right. Okay, and finally, since Total Drama, of course, is this crazy franchise where it's always bringing back characters and everything, do you see Dwayne and Junior coming back for a future Total Drama season?
Well, I would totally be up for that. I mean, again, that obviously is completely out of my hands, but I would do that character again in a heartbeat. I love Dwayne.
Cool. All right. Yeah, that's about all I have for Dwayne. Just, you know, like you said, I think the Clark Griswold comparison is very spot on for him. He's a really likable guy, and you know, but easily one of my favorites of that whole cast, I think, just in terms of his personality. And I also just really like the dynamic with Junior as well. A lot of good stuff on Total Drama.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, we had a lot of fun doing it, and again, a very fun character to do because he was just a dork.
Mm-hmm.
So jumping back to live action here, one of your more recent things is something called Little Mosque on the Prairie.
Yes. Yeah.
What was that? I've never heard of this before. What was that all about?
Well,
how did you get involved in that?
Was actually kind of a huge hit up here in Canada. It's a show that we did 6 seasons of, which is a big deal in any television series. And it was great. It kind of happened, you know, was shortly after, you know, the whole 9/11 thing, and people were, so the timing was perfect for this the show that took place in a small prairie town in Canada. That happened to have a Muslim population, and the show was all about just, you know, people learning to get along with one another, and I had a great role in the show. I played played a guy named Fred Tupper, who was this sort of incendiary redneck talk show host who was just always throwing gasoline on the fire, you know.
Oh God!
But it was great because even Fred, you know, through the 6 seasons, Fred had moments where he realized that, you know, these Muslim people were just people after all, so it was a really fun show. One of the best gigs I've ever had.
Sounds very culturally relevant, especially nowadays.
Was very relevant, and I think also, you know, I think because it was produced in Canada, you know, it needed a Canadian touch. I mean, it would have been a very different show had it been produced in the States. I think Canadians have a certain lightness of approach to that, and I think only Canada could have made that show the way it was made, and it's still hugely successful. I mean, it runs all over the Middle East, and I get people stopping me all the time on the street, you know, Muslim and otherwise, who say, you know, oh man, we love that show.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, very cool.
That's awesome.
That you can touch a community like that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
especially in such a trying time, like, you know, like 2001.
Yeah, I think we all felt very, very good about it. For me, the defining moment, I remember I was sitting downtown in Toronto at an Indian restaurant one night with some friends. And at one point in time, I noticed this little girl had come over and was standing beside my table. And her father was kind of standing up behind her. And they were Muslims, I could tell, because the mother was sitting at the table and she was wearing the hijab on her head. And I turned to the little girl, I said, hi, can I help you? And she was very shy, and her dad was standing behind her and had his hands on her shoulders. He said, go ahead and tell him, honey, tell him what you wanted to tell him.
Oh no.
She looks at me and she goes, I really like you on your show, Little Mosque on the Prairie. And I looked at her, I said, you've watched that show and you liked my character?
Right.
So that's when I knew that we were doing something right, you know. So
like, even though you play the villain, you're still like reaching someone's heart. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's great.
That's awesome. And so I guess now would be as good a time as any to transition from film to writing. How did you become interested in writing? Because that's kind of a different beast to tackle than acting would be.
Yeah, I mean, writing, I've always liked to write, and I've always been writing since high school. I've written some scripts. I've written a few television scripts. I had a writing partner in high school and university that we worked together, and we did some stand-up comedy together. I've always loved, I'm a huge reader, love to read, and so words are a bit of a passion for me. And I guess in 1990, a long time ago, believe it or not, when the Harry Potter phenomenon took off, I was living in a small town in southern Ontario, and I loved the Harry Potter stuff, and I read them to my kids, and they were huge fans, and I was so thrilled that like the R.L. Stein stuff, it was getting kids reading. And I remember picking up the local community paper one day and reading this letter to the editor that some idiot had written, slamming Harry Potter as being, in league with the devil. And for kids to get into Satan worship and stuff. So I wrote a letter of rebuttal to this piece, very tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, very funny, and I sent it in, and they printed it. And like the next week, the publisher of the paper called me and said, we really love that piece. Would you consider doing a monthly humor column? And I went, oh, sure, that'd be awesome. So I started to do that, and the thing kind of just took off. It became very popular. Then it moved to a weekly, and then it became syndicated. And it runs down throughout southeastern Ontario, and I have tens of thousands of readers now, and it's great. And I can't believe I've been doing it since 1990 now. A weekly column, and that little 500-word column brings me more joy, more pleasure than I think pretty much anything I've done on film or screen, because of the connections that it allows me to make with people. It's been wonderful.
So 1990, that is a long time, almost 30 years now.
Yeah, exactly. I can't believe how fast that's gone by. Yeah.
And then how did you become interested in children's book writing? I know you mentioned that a little while ago.
Yeah, well, again, and when my kids were little, one of the perks of being self-unemployed as an actor is that you
Like that.
you get to spend a lot of time with your kids, when they're growing up, and which I loved, and got to watch them play, hang out with them and their friends, and in my downtime when I wasn't auditioning or working on camera or recording something, I would just try to fill that creative niche by writing. And I started to write goofy little poems about my kids and, the stuff that they inspired me, or they'd get me thinking about stuff that happened to me when I was a kid.
Mhm.
And I kept all these things on my computer and then, wrote stories and whatnot. And then a number of years ago, I bumped into a publisher who loved this stuff and said, let's put these things into book form. And so we did that, and it's been great.
That's awesome. And then you have a series of other books. One's called Enter Laughing, the early years.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write that? I'm guessing it's your career, correct?
Yeah, it's an anthology of my an early anthology of a lot of my newspaper columns.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so there's sort of a whole collection of different things, about watching my kids grow up, life in general. I try to write things that resonate with people, that other people would get immediately.
Yeah.
And then we have the other book that came out, I guess, most recently is called Semicolon, which is a writer's cheeky journey through colorectal cancer. I was diagnosed in 2004 with stage 3 colorectal cancer and survived, obviously. But while I was going through the treatments and surgery and all that stuff, I had lots and lots of wonderful people who wanted to check up on me and call me or email me and send me their best wishes, and I was just too tired to respond to everybody collectively, so individually rather. So I started to write these weekly broadcast emails that were kind of funny, letting everybody know what I was going through. And again, I kept these things, and my publisher got wind of this, and she looked at them. She said, these would make a really great book.
Wow.
For people who are going through it and stuff. And we said, oh, that'd be cool. So yeah, we packaged them all together, and it's a great toilet book. You can sort of have it in there and you can just read read one of these emails, one or two of them while during the time it takes for a bowel movement, essentially.
Great.
Well, I guess that covers about everything. We covered film and writing and everything. Is there anything else you guys wanted to add on?
I actually had one question. Now, obviously, after the success of the Goosebumps film and everything, there is a rumor going around that the sequel, because there is a release date now actually for next year, September, and there is a rumor going around that it may possibly be Horrorland. If you were approached to cameo or take some part in it, would you be down for that?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm 56 now, and I think when I first made that first version of Horrorland, I was in my 30s, and to put that freaking suit back on again. I don't know,
what if it was motion capture at this point? What if you just had to wear the weird Andy Serkis motion capture suit?
Yeah, we could talk about that. We could talk about doing that. But you never know. I mean, I'm a Canadian actor. We do anything, right? So
yeah, because even in the first film, a lot of the original stars, they sort of cameoed here and there, even as students and teachers, just sort of in the background here and there. But it was pretty cool to see them. Yeah,
that'd be fun. I mean, for people who are really into the show and who would get that, yeah, I would totally be up to doing that. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
cool.
What did you think of the film? Were you excited for it? Were you just it's there?
Yeah, I was more, again, it's funny because for me, it's a job. It's a job I love, but it's not something that I get gaga about, and if I watch something, I generally watch it because I want to see a friend who's in it or something like that. But it is funny because people say that I ruin films for them because it's and I'm watching it and going, oh, look at the lighting in that shot. Or, oh, that's cool dialogue. Look at that. You're wrecking it. Stop it.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've taken filmmaking classes in high school, and people say I do that same thing. So
Yeah, I know. We're not much fun in a movie theater.
right. My dad vividly remembers me just scoffing over and over again when we went to go see Live Free or Die Hard. Every time they would have Bruce Willis not swear. And I'm like, oh, this is PG-13, Die Hard. This is ridiculous. Yeah. Anyways.
Okay, so we've got one of our viewers here. I'm sorry, were you saying something?
Oh no, I just said fun times.
Oh, okay. So one of our viewers here, he missed the first 30 minutes, and he's wondering if you could do your Russian Diesel 10 impression again.
Sorry, the phone just rang again, guys. Sorry.
Okay. One of our viewers here, we have a few viewers here, and he's wondering, he missed the first 30 minutes of the podcast, and he's wondering if you could do your Diesel 10 Russian impression again.
Okay, certainly. This is the voice of Diesel 10. It was a great big voice of a very stupid man, stupid brain, who's been sniffing too much of his own diesel fumes. There we go.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much. Well, Neil, is there anything else you guys wanted to add on to anything?
I think I'm good, man. I think we've covered a good variety of stuff here.
Yeah, asked all the questions that I was wanting. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Neil, I'd love to thank you for joining us. This was such a pleasure.
Well, thank you, guys. It was nice chatting with you.
You too. Thank you so much.
And on that note, everyone, don't forget to subscribe and check out our latest podcast we have coming up. Thank you very much.